All right. Welcome in to another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Today, we got the Holy Triumphant, the Trinity, the Poseidon's Trident back in the building. We're going to be talking about your Kings, your Los Angeles Kings, the defenseman goalie situation. Get in the chat, like and subscribe. Let's go. Well, welcome in, everybody. We're back. The boys are back. I need a little hiatus. I need to take a couple weeks off. Everybody needs a little time off, but we're back, all three of us. The Triumphant is here, talking Kings hockey. So the first thing I got to say, love you guys, man. I'm glad to see you guys' faces on the other side of the screen, talking some Kings hockey. So appreciate you guys. Good seeing you all. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Having a better week than Jamie Benn, that's for sure. How you doing, Joe?
I mean, I've never assassinated anybody from the back of the neck before, so I don't know.
He fell on him. He had to break his fall with his stick. Come on, guys.
What an explanation that was.
Talk about giving him a shovel to dig his own hole, right?
Yeah. Seriously. Bit of rough going for that team. No, going pretty well. I'm going to try to get to Rochester's buzzing right now in the AHL. They're in the conference finals. They just finished off a split in Hershey, so I'm going to try to catch game 3 or 4 here. I'll tell you right now, Buffalo's got some exciting freaking players coming. If people haven't caught on to this Yuri Kulik yet, they're going to real soon because this guy's
not even. And then also JJ Peterka.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Buffalo draft pick, right?
Oh yeah.
Dude, I mean, his goal today for Germany. I was watching that German-Swiss game. And that goal he had where he just toe dragged around and fired, I'm like, why can't a Kings prospect do that?
Matthew Savoy's now playing in Rochester. Isak Rosen. I mean, they got some players.
Kevin Adams has done a really good job there, considering everything that happened with the Jack Eichel situation.
Well, and consider. Not only are the Buffalo Sabres dominating these playoffs, but they're such key integral pieces. Look at how Jack Eichel has been incredible. He's been a dominant force in these playoffs. Then you go to Florida, and Sam Reinhart has been awesome. Brandon Montour has been awesome. Luosterainen has been really, really a really solid pickup for them. I love it. I hope Jack Eichel in Vegas wins the cup and he takes it to Buffalo. That's what I want him to do. Because that dude, the amount of crap that guy took. And listen, I know his body language, yada, yada, sometimes is a little negative and it sucks. But, man, the amount of heat he took, there's his end of tenure there in Buffalo and people laughing at him from Buffalo from afar as he was not playing well. Everybody laughed at Vegas for missing the playoffs last year. So I'll be honest, and I know it's a little odd as a Kings fan. I'm kind of pulling for Vegas to win this whole thing just because it'd be great to see that.
I mean, you've been an Eichel fan from the time the trade rumor started, even before that. You've been on his bandwagon.
All I see, Rando, when I see every time Jack Eichel does something good, I just think, man, is that a missed opportunity? I would love to know what those conversations were with the Kings and if there were Kings and Vegas talks, because this is the player. He is a dominant player, and even if he's not putting up significant points like this series, I think he's been kind of quiet, but he's dominating play when he's on the ice. He's been great. He was great earlier in the playoffs. He's just such a good player. He's kind of evolving into a 200-foot player, and so young at such a good contract. It was such a no-brainer deal for anybody, frankly. I don't know. Hey, now he's in the division. Fantastic.
Well, everybody's coming in the chat. Nav, as I put earlier. Sup, boys? Welcome back in, Nav. And you got Kings real coming. Hey, guys, thanks for coming in and talk hockey. Thank you for listening to hockey here. We're going to get into it here on defensemen and goalies tonight. We're going to start with the defensemen. This is kind of being an open range conversation, right? So we want to talk like we're here, having a few drinks, talking at the bar, what Kings hockey, what we saw this year, whether it was a player, it was a pairing, it was defensive allotment, how they were used in different situations, what we kind of saw the good and the bad, the ugly. Let's just kind of open it up. Russ, I want to start with you. Where do you want to start here? You want to start with the player? You want to start with the pairing? You want to start with allotment? How do you want to go about this?
There's a lot, that goes into defense. I guess the defensive situation for the Kings this past season was up and down, to say the least. There's really been the first pairing has really solidified itself in Mikey Anderson and Drew Doughty. So you have that for time to come. And I guess Mikey Anderson's contract is one of the bigger news stories to come out of the defensive side, which was incredible value. That thing's going to look so good in a couple years.
Don't mean to cut you off. We're still all that's a positive, right? His contract value, 100%. Definite positive. Joe, positive.
Yeah. A little more. I'd like a little more out of him, but I'm not. I think it's going to be a net positive for sure over the course of the contract. Yeah.
I don't think we're looking at Mikey Anderson to be more of a player than what he already is now. If he's this type of player for his entire 8 years, I'd be totally fine with what he's being paid. Maybe would have looked for a little bit more in the playoffs, but you're going against Draisaitl and McDavid. It is what it is. But who knows? And I guess just to kind of round out the defense for me, I guess depth kind of became a problem, I guess, toward the end. Alex Edler, to me, was supposed to be somebody that maybe platooned a little bit more. He played a lot more than I thought he should have. Sean Durzi, first real year playing on the left side with Matt Roy, looked okay. And then once Gavrikov came in, they decided to put him back on the right side in the third pairing, which was just horrible with Edler. So I don't know. There's still a lot of question marks that need to be answered on the defensive side, especially on the left side, especially and also with. Yeah, obviously there's a need for a top four.
You talked about Edler. Let's talk about Edler first.
Edler.
We talked about his contract in the beginning. Mm-hmm. We all said it was excellent value, which what we got. It was a steal by Rob Blake. How has that matured? And do you think it was worth it to have him on the roster this season? Do you think that he was a detriment to the team? And because of his age, was he played more than he should have been? How does that contract age since what we talked about in last offseason?
Yeah, I thought the contract at the time, I thought it was excellent, really. $750,000 for a player who was pretty good in his first year with the Kings. Comes in, at that league minimum. I think that's incredible value for a bottom pair defenseman. Still would have liked to see him, like I said, play a little bit less, maybe platoon him a little bit more. They kind of went to getting away from him and playing back-to-back games toward the end of the season, which was a good idea. But, yeah, for a third pair defenseman that you're looking to play 14 minutes a night, I thought he was fine, more than fine. So I thought it was a great deal by Rob Blake and good signing.
Yeah, I thought Edler was fine on the season overall. I don't know what people's expectations would have been. So I think when you're making that money and you're at the age he's at, I thought he was perfectly fine. Now, I think the issue is, as you alluded to, Randon, is he probably played too much. I don't know. There could be a number of reasons for that. They had an issue with, it's tough for them maybe for certain guys to come up and down, like Mo Verari, if they brought him up, did they want to put him back down if they were going to do something like that? They didn't have a lot of lefty options, obviously, with Bjornfoot and Mo Verari really being the only other two that were going to come, that could have come up and played, I guess. But for Edler as a whole, I thought he was fine. He was good on the penalty kill this year. So I didn't have any issues with the contract necessarily. I didn't love the idea of him coming back per se, but given the options and at the cost, he was fine. Russ said that the D-core as a whole is kind of a little disjointed, and there's still a lot of those questions, but Edler was fine.
Yeah, I think I want to mention a player that Kings Rule mentioned. He asked the question, what is going on with Bjornfoot? So I guess I'll just throw that question to you, Joe, because you mentioned Bjornfoot, and that's kind of a player that maybe would have taken the place of Edler in certain situations, but we just never really saw him, right?
Yeah. What I can't fit, and I hate, especially with defensemen, like giving up, quote unquote, on a player this early because he's still so young, despite how he seems like he's been around forever, but he's still really, is he 22?
100 plus games already.
He's still so young. But what I am really concerned about is I just don't know what he is. Like, there's some guys like a Jordan Spence or a Brant Clark where maybe they're not ready per se, but you know what they are, what they're going to bring.
Dallas just tied it up. We're live. Sorry, on YouTube. Dallas just tied it up again.
It's 2-2, yeah.
Yeah, it's 2-2, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Even Jacob Moverari, you know what Jacob Moverari is. Like, there's not a question as to what his point and his style of play is going to be. I have no idea what Toby Bjornfot is. Is he going to be a guy that can be somebody that's up in the play in transition, move pucks efficiently? Is he going to be kind of that steady stay-at-home guy? Can he kill penalties? You know, and I didn't see as much of the Ontario Reign this year as I did in the past, but he showed spurts again. He always shows spurts and little flashes here and there, but there's no consistency whatsoever. Will he make it to the NHL? Maybe, and maybe in a different team, and maybe with the Kings, but I'm struggling to see him being above a bottom pair D-man right now.
Our resident expert in the Reign, Kyle Garcia, in our closing arguments for the team. I mean, we haven't had the season ending. I mean, sorry, Kyle, we haven't had that chance to record that, but he was telling me that Bjornfot was unaspiring this year. Like, he was just there. And so if you've played 100 games in the NHL and you're not at least dominating defensively, which is what we drafted him as, is this a time? The B word, bust, is a harsh word in sports. Is he a bust? Is it just, hey, we missed on this pick? We evaluate him for his character, right? He was a captain for Sweden. He played multiple games on the first line, or multiple seasons on the first line for Team Sweden. Is he a bust in the NHL level?
Again, he's so young to where, can he carve out an NHL career? I think that's still a possibility. Is it in a top 4 role? Boy, that's hard to see right now. I think he's more of a 5, 6, 7 type of defenseman. You know, I looked at Sean O'Brien's the way his AHL model that he uses, and it's not a perfect model, but it's for the information and the data that they have, it's certainly not bad. It's better than nothing. And he grades out Bjornfot as a third pair defenseman. This is in the AHL. It's like, I really want to be careful. I don't want to give up on the player because of his age, but I'm not holding any sort of stock in thinking that Bjornfot's going to be any sort of impact NHL defenseman.
So Joe's on bust. Where are you at?
I don't think he's a bust. I mean, I'm not going to go that far. I mean,
he's a first. Let's get harsh here. He's a first round pick.
Right? Yeah, I mean,
he should be a top 4 player. Do you think he'll be a top 4 player?
No, well, that's what I was going to say. Is
okay.
I mean, if we call him a bust, I mean, he's younger than Alex Turcotte. Then are we going to call Alex Turcotte a bust? Which it's kind of looking at that way, but we haven't really seen him play yet. So you got
I would.
That's the point. But the thing is it's all about expectations for Bjornfot. I think he coming in, starting off as the top pair or at the top pair with Drew Doughty, that maybe was a little too harsh to start off with your career. He didn't really look too great. But yeah, he showed flashes, and I thought Joe was perfect or spot on where he said, we just don't know what Bjornfot is as a defenseman. I mean, I remember what was that goal he had in Ontario where he just like dangled through 4 guys, and it was like, where has this been? Where is this Toby Bjornfot? I mean, we see that at times where he has that capability to bring the puck all the way up ice from his own defensive zone and get a scoring chance, and it just for some reason he just decides not to do it. I mean, there's things with the one thing I've always noticed with Bjornfot, he gets lost a lot in his own zone, a lot. I mean, he just looks like a chicken with his head cut off when he's trying to figure out his matchups. So I don't know. I think I'll just go back to the expectations. For my expectations, I don't think he's a top 4 defenseman right now. I mean, but I'm not going to write him off as not being an NHLer. I think if he can be a quality third pair defenseman, I mean, we're talking about a high first round pick. There are not a lot of jackpots there. But I mean, if he can be a solid bottom pair defenseman, especially coming in next season when I believe he's still on his ELC or might be even at a low cap hit, I don't think it's going to be a bad option for the Kings just to give him 50 to 60 games on the third pair on the left side.
I think that's a bit of a. I think that's a stretch. Like I'm certainly not giving him to that at the moment. Like
you also, it's the salary cap that the Kings are in right now. I mean, This is a player that they might have to play because of the situation if they resign a player like Gavrikov or somebody else.
And we'll dissect that in future in the offseason. I think you're looking at this. If he might be one of those guys, and I had this conversation about a football player with another fan a while ago. Okay, first round pick, you want him to be a career top 4 guy. But if he plays over 400 games for the Kings as a bottom 4 instead of a top 4, is that a successful pick? It probably is, considering the odds of playing over 200 games.
He's getting hemmed in, then I guess not.
But if he's getting hemmed in, he's probably not on the roster. True. Right? True. So I think, as of my expectation for him and what he was when he's drafted, it's a bust so far, but I'm not writing him off as an NHLer. Like, I'm not saying that his career is over. I'm just saying that he's bust is like I said, is a harsh word. It's the harshest word of a prospect. He's not exceeded expectations. He's not even met expectations for me in his draft cost. We'll just say that. I want to go.
Did they trade up to get Bjornfoot too, or that was the first round of the
I don't remember that.
Vaguely sounds right, Russ, but I'd have to look.
Why? If we want to look that up, that's fine. Let's move it over here. I think the one of the most polarizing players that I want to bring up is Durzi, the Durzi experiment, right? So
the Durzi.
So Durzi or Lurzy or Wurzy, however you want to word him on Twitter, people calling him, based on his play is exactly what we got. The most polarizing defenseman on the Kings roster. You're looking at, he played the left side, played the right side. And I think that he is fairly and unfairly scrutinized at the same time. Like, he's the most amoeba defenseman on this roster. And this debate might take 45 minutes, so buckle up, because like, that's just the type of player he is, right? So before we get into that, I'm going to bring up one of our sponsors here in Raycon. So let's face it, with coffee starting at $5, yes, most coffees are basic coffees at $5. Our bank accounts are somehow always depleting, and we're officially in the dupe session. Most products are the same thing, but overpriced differently, solely based on the brand name. So a good duplicate, or a dupe as the industry call it, is a crucial high quality at the best price. One dupe you can't get sleep on is Raycon wireless earbuds. Raycon has premium audio. It's perfect price point, so you can listen to what you want when you want without breaking the bank. Raycon's mission is to prove that you shouldn't have to pay an arm and a leg for quality sound and essential smart tech listening features. You can get a pair and a spare and still pay less than what people would pay for earbuds, right? Or big name tech brands out there. Raycon knows that the economy and every purchase needs to be perfect. They offer a buy now, pay later options. Right now, you can pay as low as $18 at checkout and pay the rest later. They have an easy and free return guarantee. They offer 2 years protection. They also offer domestic shipping. They have over 50,000 reviews. Raycon is where it's at. Customize your profile, your color options, noise isolation, awareness sound, crystal clear quality, water and sweat resistant, over 8 hours of playtime for every earbud. Go buy Raycon.com at THPN today. Go get 15% off your order. Buy Raycon.com/THPN to score 15% off your Raycon purchase. Raycon's hearing that stuff. Are we hearing that stuff? Because most fans are in or out on Durzi. They're either on one side of the fence or the other. Joe, where are you at? Where are you at on Durzi? What was the season? What were your expectations? How are you figuring that out?
I'm probably in the minority that I got no problem really with Durzi. I know he's a risky player, pretty high risk, can be high reward. Thought, for his first full NHL season, he's playing along the left side, which is probably an adjustment for him to get used to. And I thought he handled it pretty well. Him and Roy were a fine pair. And that's really the perfect guy to kind of help him through that. And Matt Roy, who was, excellent this season. I liked his game. He made some mistakes with the puck, but I'd rather have a guy that's willing to try to do some of those things and try to make plays with the puck. In his first season, you're probably going to have a guy that's going to make some mistakes with the puck in his first full season. I think as he gets a little bit older and gets more comfortable, it's only going to help him. I thought the only time he was really, really bad was when he was paired with Alex Edler. That pair just didn't work. And they kind of force-fed it down the end of the season and then into playoffs. And I think a lot of people knew that wasn't going to work, and it didn't. So, but I like him. I think, to me, I do think he's somebody that, depending on what they decide to do with the back end, he's expendable to me. Not only if only because of the depth.
That was my next question. That's my next question. Is he on the roster or tradable in your mind?
He's tradable, but it's only because.
Is he going to be on the roster or is he traded?
It's so hard to say because there's just.
I'm asking you to make a decision, Joe. Come on, stop blocking the company line, my man.
I will say I'm going to say he stays.
All right, Russ, what do you think?
I think he should stay. Okay. I'm a big Durzi believer, right. And I think, obviously it's tough sometimes. I think I even tried to defend him at one point, and then he immediately just made some kind of Lurzy mistake and made me eat my words. But yeah, it's just like Joe said, this is a player that the Kings don't have a lot of. I mean, they have their offensive prospects that are coming up, and Jordan Spence and Brant Clark, kind of probably players that might have higher potential than Sean Durzi. But I mean, if you look at Dom Luszczyszyn's athletic player cards for Sean Durzi, his market value is $7.8 million. And he's getting paid $1.7 million right now. So this is a player that's going to have one more year left at that $1.7 million cap hit, and who's going to be an RFA after that contract is over. So you still have team control with that. So that's a player. I mean, if I'm moving him, like if he's being traded, like if you ask me that question, it's because you're getting a better piece in return. He's not going to be just a player you try to get rid of, you get a draft pick for. You're putting a package together to get another top four lefty man. But I mean, if he opens as a top four lefty and you have Jordan Spence starting out as the right D on the third pair, I'm fine with that, to be honest with you.
That means you're trading Roy.
No, this would be my defense if the season ended. If let's say they re-signed Gavrikov, I would just be. You would have Mikey and Doughty at the top.
We're getting to the Russian already. All right.
You have Durzi and Roy again, and then I'd be totally fine with Gavrikov and Spence. That would be
Russ, but
that would be me.
I get it, but
they're not going to pay. Yeah, they're not going to play Gavrikov third pair.
Yeah, they're not. But I'm right there with you, and I want to piggyback off something Russell said as one of my reasonings as well for why Durzi I think stays is because the contract not only for him, but like again, they don't have a lot of cap space. And the other thing I would consider is we've seen the Kings. Like I don't think Brant Clark is starting in the NHL next year.
Yeah.
Because I don't like that, Brandon. I think we have seen the Kings let their prospects take that extra time in the AHL all the time. Right, we've seen that. So I think Jordan Spence may be somebody that's up next season to start, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if Brant Clark is starting in Ontario next year because we've seen this before. This is what the Kings have done with their prospects. They've really taken the slow approach, for better or for worse. And I think so much of this hinges on LD2 / Gavrikov because if he does come back. There's no room for all those guys, Durzi, Spence, and Clark, unless something else happens, i.e. Matt Roy. But like that's if they don't bring Gavrikov back and they don't address it via free agency or trade, Now you could be looking at a situation where you have at least the Kings know Durzi Roy was effective. Like I know it's not ideal, but it was effective. And I wrote the article a few weeks back, maybe a month ago, that because of the cap is so tight. It is what it is. It's going to be really difficult to move money and to pay a Gavrikov. That hypothetically, if they can't fit that and they went with a decor of Anderson, Doughty, Durzi, Roy, which was their top 4 for 60 games last year, and they were one of the best defensive teams in the league, and then you follow that up with a Clark, Spence, are they really worse off than
all righties, huh? You're going all righties. I love it.
Hey, listen, this is what they've got to work with, and I'm of the belief that they need more skill in the lineup. So if that certainly accomplishes that goal.
So let's go down that road. I like that road. Joe, you brought up a topic that I like. I like it. So out of the top 7 defensemen in the organization, are 6 of them right-handed shots? Outside of Mikey Anderson, are the top 7 defensemen right-handed shots?
Besides Gavrikov,
yeah, because he's a free agent, right?
He won't be signed. Yeah.
I
don't think we'll sign him.
Listen, it's not ideal. And I hope that the Kings are able to find a way to make it work. It's not something that I love, but if you're asking me would I play Bjornfoot because he's left-handed on the left side, or Brandt Clark, it's an easy answer for me. It's Brandt Clark or Jordan Spence. I will play somebody or Sean Durzi.
So you're not upset with Doughty, Anderson, Roy, Durzi, Brandt Clark, Jordan Spence
because of the way the money is right now. And I think I think it's going to be easier said than done to move out Cal Peterson. I do think they'll find a taker for a Victor Arvidsson. I think if he's the one to go, or one of the forwards, I think it'll be easier to move one of them. Is that enough, though? Is that even enough to re-sign Gavrikov? Just Arvidsson? I don't know that that's enough, because he makes 4 and change. You're going to have bumps for Velarde. So I'm not sure if that is even enough. Again, I'm thinking Gavrikov's a 5x5. I think he gets $25 to $30 million this year.
Okay, let's switch the topic to that then. Let's go outside of all the right defensemen. Let's switch it up to Gavrikov. We all were down on the trade as far as value of what we gave up for what we got. Now we know the end result. Are you guys still a fan of the trade, and where do you feel about the Gavrikov re-signing? Russell?
I think the trade. Oh man, it's tough. I mean, the trade itself, in terms of getting the players those were players that they needed. You needed a left shot defenseman, and you needed a goalie. Perfect, worked out. It felt like, I guess I'm looking more at the trade deadline from a macro perspective, because I thought they could have done more. But I guess in just that deal, I thought it was a good deal. Gavrikov exceeded my expectations. Like I said, I've had to eat crow by him playing a lot better than I thought he would play and fit with this team. But it was also kind of, we were also right in the fact that when you had Gavrikov and Roy together, that left Edler and Durzi together, and we all saw how that dumpster fire worked out. So that was our problem with the trade, is because when you bring in a player like Gavrikov, sure, you can put him on the top 4, but then you still have issues on the third pair defenseman. And that's kind of where we saw some of those issues come to play. But I don't know. I thought Gavrikov played a lot better. I think the Kings, everything I've kind of read and hear is, I'd be surprised if Gavrikov didn't sign with LA. It kind of feels like he acclimated very quickly to the locker room. A lot of the guys like him. You see him at Laker games with a lot of the players. I think that culture and those friendships, and you hear about is like even the wives like becoming friends with his wife. That goes a long way to get players to really like to stay. So I don't know. I feel like if they can get him signed for anything under 4.5, I think that's a win for the Kings. And I don't want it to be a long-term deal, but if you can get it like 4 years at 4.5, I think I'm okay with that. I just don't know. It's just the problem is now you have him signed for a couple years. You have Mikey Anderson, obviously, with the long-term deal. What do you do when Matt Roy's deal is done? Because you guys know how much I love Matt Roy. Drew Doughty's obviously not going anywhere. Does Jordan Spence all of a sudden assume that left side role once Durzi leaves, which I think he could. So, yeah, I mean, like Joe talks about this, the Kings have always been asset management first. They always like to hold on to their assets and extend those that hold that they have on those prospects and in terms of contracts and all that whatnot, as long as they can. So that's why when we hear about when I talk about Sean Durzi only having $1.7 million left on his contract, I think that's a player that needs to stay, and I think he will stay because of that fact.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the trade, quick, Randon, I mean, it was a position. There were positions, I would say, that needed to be filled in lefty and goalie, and I think with goalie, Korpisalo was obviously, he gave them two legitimate options as opposed to just Copley, so he helped. I'm not in any rush to re-sign him because goalies are goalies for me. As far as Gavrikov, it's just there's two things for me. It comes down to the term. I if it's a 5-year deal, they're going to regret it, I think, because I just don't know that players like this are going to age all that well in today's game. If it's $5 million, I'm not interested, especially if it's because I assume it's probably going to come at a 5-year. I think he's going to get a big deal. I think his play, he was good. Don't get me wrong. I've taken
we talked about recency bias in all of sports. Like his recency bias is top shelf. I mean, he played very well in the playoffs.
And if he was pretty, multiple outlets reported that he was not interested in signing with Edmonton. He was not interested in signing with Boston. He was not interested in signing with Los Angeles. He wanted to test the market. I guess unless he really fell in love with this Kings team in the city of LA, which is possible. Why would he change that now when you're this close to testing the market and you're probably going to have teams beating down your door to give you $30 million? If I'm him from a strictly financial standpoint, I think I would test the market. But as Russ said, maybe he's been acclimated. So for me, it's two things. One is the term. And the other thing is you're now going to run back the same. And this is a separate discussion, probably the same top four, which has 3 defensive defensemen, none of which are really good at moving pucks. Do we really think that's good enough? Do we think the top 4 that the Kings had this year is good enough?
No, that's my argument right there.
And that's not a Gavrikov thing. Like if the Kings decide
that's a Rob Blanks thing.
Well, that's a McClellan thing. That's because they're playing him in a situation you shouldn't be playing in.
They have to play these guys. They have to play the style they're playing in because this is the personnel they have. These guys aren't great mobility. They're not.
Do you really think Todd McClellan's going to change his style because of the defenseman he has?
I think.
Listen,
this is a Todd McClellan that was one of the high flying, most offensive San Jose Sharks teams for years back in the day, right? Todd McClellan can play with an offensive upbeat, up style team. That's my belief that I think he can do that. So if you were to mix in, you've got a decor that now has Doughty, Durzi, Spence, and Clark. I think we could see
the same head coach that buries offensive players because they lack defensive acumen.
Fair. That's a fair question. I think that it's in him to do that. I think the system is personnel driven because none of the D are really good at moving pucks. There was the tweet that Jay Fresh put out, which was based on Corey Schnell 3 zones tracking. In the first round, 5 of the Kings 6, I guess 7 defensemen were in the bottom 20, was it, or 25? 20, I think it was. Defensemen in failed plays, failed zone exits, failed entries, just failed plays. 5 of them, because that's not what they're good at. They're not good at chasing. They're not good at moving pucks. They're not good. And to me, that's got a ceiling. So if you bring Gavrikov back, this is why, and I know a lot of people, Russ included, hate it when I mention trading Matt Roy. Listen, I love Matt Roy. I think he's a great defenseman. I think he's a perfect guy to have. The problem is, if you keep Gavrikov, they're going to play him with Roy. The pairing was really good, obviously. But now you have 3 guys that, again, do any of us think Anderson, Gavrikov, Roy are efficient at moving pucks?
Are you kind of going like a New York like Queen situation, like the street game, where it's like, okay, well, Roy's got 1 year left on his contract. If we sign Gavrikov, we'll just get rid of Roy. We'll substitute the defensive defenseman, and we'll figure out because, hey, we got 2 offensive defensemen on the right side. We'll just substitute Roy for Gavrikov.
I mean, that's my thought. My mindset is let's play the game here. Well, it's hypothetical. Is you got Anderson and Doughty, which part of this plays into that plays into this too, is because that pair wasn't good, and that's a problem too. Your top pair wasn't very good. So, if you bring back Gavrikov and hypothetically deal Roy, and again, Roy would be quote unquote from a contract standpoint better to deal than Durzi because he makes more and it opens up a little bit more money. And you've got Spence and you've got Clark. Now, do I see the Kings doing that and bringing 2 such young, inexperienced players and playing them both regular minutes? No, I don't. Do you mean
yes, 2021 playoff expertise, Jordan Spence?
I think they both. I think they can both play. I think they can both bring an element to what the Kings can do. The Evolving Hockey has a statistic, and it's sort of similar to baseball's WAR statistic. Okay, it's called goals above replacement. The Kings have 2 defensemen in their top 100 in the NHL in that statistic, and one of those defensemen is Matt Roy. The other one is Brandt Clark, and this wasn't a rate stat; it wasn't a per 60. So Brandt Clark was like that much in his small sample was very, very good as an offensive defenseman. So
in 8 games,
just to give you an idea of where the Kings stack up, it's just I need more. I'm not talking goals. I'm talking just get pucks from the D out of the zone, be able to, because to me that's where the issue was with Edmonton. They couldn't get out of their own zone. And how are you going to beat a team? How are you going to win games if you can't get out of your own zone? So my concern is to wrap this all up. My only issue with bringing Gavrikov back is I really genuinely worry that it's going to be the same top 4, 3 of which aren't great at moving pucks. That concerns me. To me, that has a ceiling. To me, they'll be very good in the regular season. They can maybe win a round depending on matchup. I don't think that's a decor that can make a run.
How do you feel about that, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said with Gavrikov, I think he should come back. I mean, I would be okay with him coming back. It's just I'd want the deployment to be different. And I agree with Joe. I don't think Brandt Clark, Jordan Spence, and Sean Durzi are going to be on the roster all together this year, unless there's injuries, barring any injury, of course. But to start off, let's say Gavrikov does come back, those 3 players aren't going to start off on the Kings roster. So you're most likely going to have Jordan Spence start off and then Brandt Clark start in the AHL, which I'm okay with. It's just I don't know if I'm okay with the Sean Durzi, Jordan Spence pairing if you're going to have the top 4 be what it is. Is that better than what it was last year? Maybe. I mean, you might have a little bit of an upgrade with Jordan Spence coming in for Edler, depending on who plays the left side. So we'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, I just go back to the asset management. And the Kings have 1 more year left on Matt Roy's deal, 1 more year left on Sean Durzi's deal. I don't think Sean Durzi is getting moved unless it's, like I said, to bring a better player back. And I don't think Matt Roy is getting moved just because I think the coaching staff really likes him. And I believe I think, especially with Kopitar's contract going away, the salary cap going up, I think there's a real chance that they could re-sign him. It's just tough because then who's going to end up playing that left side, whether it's Jordan Spence or Brandt Clark, because you have to have both of them on the roster. Not next year, but the year after that. Both of those players have to be on the roster.
They should be on the roster next year.
They should be.
You should be, but I don't know. I'm a Sean Durzi guy. I'm just gonna say it. I'm a Sean Durzi guy, and I think this was his real first full year, and he was asked a lot. Keep reading it. This is a guy who was asked to play left defense as a right shot for the first time in his career.
Well, let me go back to what my original question was, so I can get my point in, and then I'll tie it back in what you were saying, Russ. I give this total trade an L. Obviously, it's hindsight, right? Hindsight's 2020. Kings make it to the Western Conference Finals, right? Like we're all singing a different tune. But what you're saying, Joe, and what goes on, like we brought in the goalie because we needed a goalie. The defenseman didn't fit what we needed. That's why my biggest grade is a C at the time, or C minus. Wow, so harsh. Like Gavrikov is not the defenseman we needed.
He strengthened to strength.
He strengthened to strength, and he should have been a third pairing. Like that's what it should have been. Like you should have kept Durzi, and I like Durzi. I really do. I think like he's
the Durzi Roy pairing was good. It was good.
Over 70% Corsi for most of the season. So Durzi answered the bell what he was asked. Right, he got thrown in a situation that he wasn't normally used to. He answered the bell, and he was successful for most of the season. This is not a Durzi slander statement. My thing is Rob Blake messed up in this trade. He brought in Corby because Cal Peterson couldn't hack it, and we had to make it. Hey, this is a expectation year. Got to him, but we all knew we weren't a Stanley Cup team, right? You're looking at the teams that are vying for right now. Like, you think we match up with Florida? Like, do you think we match up with even Carolina with injuries? Like, we're not even there. And my point is this. I'm going to tie this into what we're saying here. I don't think Durzi's only a trade candidate because how effective he was, and we have replacements on the right side. Would I trade Durzi because of his play? No. Like, I think Roy, the fact that you could trade him away with 1 year left on his contract is an appetizing thing. And I'm a big into restocking the pool. This is the best draft that we've had in a long time. Like the prospects here, we're gonna get Chris Peters on and all that kind of stuff. The prospect pool here, the prospect depth in this draft. Last year, before he scouted this draft hardcore, he said all the top 25 guys would be top 10 in the draft previous. Like that's how deep this draft is, right? So giving away a first round pick for a maybe and a situational thing, I was kind of against that. But then if it worked out, great, because it's all about results based. Now, this is all hindsight stuff. You know, as a GM, you don't get that. So I'm not upset about Rob Blake for taking a chance. But now we get to criticize that chance, and that's what we do here. So I'm saying it's a little rough for me. Now, tying it back into Durzi, you brought in a defensive person in Gavrikov. Durzi's offensive person. If you pair him with Roy, which was successful, you put in Brandt Clark with Jordan Spence, who Jordan Spence is kind of an enigma, right? Like he has that offensive ability, obviously led the AHL in assists, but he's defensively sound, and you put him with the wild card that is Brandt Clark. That could be a very good and very tumultuous pairing next season.
The explosive pairing. That sounds like a lot of fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun, right?
Event hockey.
And
yeah, exactly.
Man, you and I, we all talked about this. Even I said this. We're not talking about futures on this podcast, but here we are talking about futures. Like that seems like a good pairing. How do you feel like this defensive organization structures out, Joe? Like
I want to take that and kind of change it slightly. I want to ask you guys a question because I feel like I'm on an island here. I am seeing the amount of the Kings need more size. I am almost appalled at, to be honest with you, at this stage. The idea that losing to Edmonton was because they weren't big enough, especially on the blue line, is like, I am blown away by that. The Kings couldn't get out of their own zone. They simply put, they couldn't. Again, you have a top four, which most of the guys can't move pucks. Your bottom pair had Durzi or Edler on it, which, you know, again, he was not cut out for that for most of those games. So I am just blown away by this. If anything, if you were to tell me the Kings needed size, if anything, it's probably in the bottom six, because I could make a case that maybe Blake Lizotte was rendered more ineffective because of his size. Rasmus Kupari hasn't filled out yet physically. So maybe you could make the case that the bottom six forward group maybe could use a little bit more size. This idea that the Kings need size in the blue line baffles me. And Rob Blake was asked the question in his end of season presser about them needing more size on the blue line. And he kind of was like, because remember 2 years ago, he said, yeah, it was something that he very much talked about. And this time he was like, I thought that he was good. I thought that he was good in the regular season type of thing. I'm very happy with his answer. What is your guys' take on this in terms of size? Because Like
this isn't 1990s hockey. Let's get this out there. Like no team has an enforcer anymore. There are people that play multiple roles, like a Ryan Reeves. Chuck is a first liner who's able to mix it up. Like there's guys that have multiple roles, but there's not a guy that's on the roster that's, hey, I'm an enforcer. I can't skate. I can't do anything else. This is not 1990s hockey.
I think what people, when they ask that question, or like, I think they're asking the wrong question. It's not size that this team is missing. It's that ability to like muck it up, or that sandpaper is what's missing from this team. And that's why I mentioned that the bottom six in terms of forward depth was missing that. It didn't have that veteran presence that was able to go in, forecheck hard, maybe start some scrums in front of the net. Because on the defensive side, yeah, Sean Durzi was a top 4 defenseman for this team. And even when they were playing really well at that point. I mean, and also with Durzi too. I mean, this is a guy who was a quarterback on the second power play unit that was top 3 in the NHL. Like, where do you need size there? So, I mean, there's no need for size. I mean, even Gavrikov, he doesn't play like a big player. I mean, how many hits did that guy have? I don't even think he led the Columbus Blue Jacket in hits.
No.
He just plays big because of his stick, his reach.
He's long. Yeah,
that's all it is.
Fine. Yeah,
it's totally fine. So I'm totally fine. Like, there's no size that's needed. I mean, that's why people ask me like, what's like your big like free agent pickup this year? I mean, because we don't think the Kings are going to make a lot of free agent pickups, but if they can sign a player like Corey Perry, I'm totally fine with that, because that'd be a player that they need, is someone who can go.
Can we finally have a player that just puts his glove in somebody's mouth?
Exactly.
And
that's
what
I'm
somebody
talking
up.
about.
Like that's
that's the exact type of player I'm looking for.
I'm just seeing. It's just crazy. Not crazy is too harsh of a word. It's just I'm just really shocked that like everybody's Kings fans are talking about Radko Gudas. It's like they're not paying attention that Brandon Montour and Gustav Forsling have been the best 2 defensemen on that team, and the reason that they're in the Cup final. It's like, what are we watching different games? It's like I don't know. I was very happy and relieved to see Rob Blake, because listen, if you can get a guy that can be an efficient puck mover and he's big, freaking awesome. But don't go get a guy just because he's big. Like Edmonton, you could argue
what defensemen out there? Let's just throw a defenseman out. It's not Kings related.
Okay.
That are puck movers, offensive acumen, that have that edge and gritty sandpaper. What kind of defensemen are those for you?
There's not a lot. Look at the top 3 Norris finalists: Cale Makar, Adam Fox, and Erik Karlsson. Do you see size when you talk about those players? I mean, even like Rasmus Dahlin. I mean, not a big physical guy. I mean, I think
isn't he 6'3", but he's not physical, right?
Yeah, he started to this year play, but that's certainly not his game. As he's gotten older, he's gotten a little bit more physically. He's thickened out a bit, so he's able to sustain the physical play. I buy the fact that you need to be able to sustain the physicality of the playoffs and the rigors of the playoffs. I get that, but good God, I mean, do you think Edmonton would rather have, I don't know, Jordan Spence or Sean Durzi than Vincent Desharnais, who was a liability despite him being a monster on the ice? I mean, what are we talking about here? It makes no sense to me.
Well, let's throw a hypothetical out here, because I think it's going to be a fun experiment. If Edmonton had Matthew Tkachuk instead of Draisaitl, would they have won the Stanley Cup this year?
No, Draisaitl's a better player.
I don't think that was the issue.
That wasn't built.
No, it wasn't the issue, because physicality, right? Like, I mean, I guess they had Evander Kane, but
Draisaitl plays with almost more physicality than Tkachuk. I'll argue that. I mean, the way he was
after the whistle, yeah, of course, because
the issue, I think Edmonton ran into a problem where it wasn't even necessarily like their depth is in their bottom 6, which own the Kings. It was that they got nothing from the Nugent Hopkins Kane line in that Vegas series. And again, Edmonton against LA, it wasn't as big of an issue because they were able to live in LA zone, but they're playing against a much better team, like offensively wise, than Vegas. And those defensemen, after they have Bouchard, who I like a lot, and he kind of made a name for himself these playoffs, but Nurse has his issues. Obviously, Ekholm's really good. Cody Cece's not a top 4 defenseman. And then you've got Desharnais. like that's not good enough. And I think, would you rather have size? Well, they got it. They've got Desharnais, they've got Nurse, they got big boys.
Evander Kane too in front.
Yeah, they needed more puck movers on the back end too, probably on that blue line against Vegas.
Well, we're talking, we're all over the place. We're, like I said, a bar conversation here for your LA Kings. But you know what's not all over the place? DraftKings. Light the lamp with DraftKings this hockey playoffs. Right on their sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and score $150 bet instantly. You're going to go for the Panthers over whoever comes out of the West? Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Sign up with code THPN. New customers can bet $5 and get a $150 free bet instantly. That's code THPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Restrictions may apply. So let's hone this back in to the Kings because we got on a tangent, which bar conversations can happen. Let's get back in it. Where are we at here on the depth of the Kings defensemen? And I want to bring this topic up because I'm the conductor to this train. Brant Clark train 101. I've been hooting this all along. Where do we find that the Kings have managed their prospects on the defensive side? Has it been enough? Because I mean, you look at Jordan Spence, defenseman, MVP, a lot of assists. He's played well on the NHL level in the playoffs. Like, where is there a mismanagement here in the prospects? Are they just constantly put them on coolers? Where do you find that the organization has been this year, and then where do you see them going forward?
I mean, I think they've been fine in terms of their development of the prospects. I'm okay with it. I mean, maybe you could have fast tracked. I'm sure a lot of people wanted to see Jordan Spence maybe a little bit more this season, but I mean, Sean Durzi was considered a prospect at one point, just a couple of years ago. Yeah, so I think maybe you can kind of look at maybe they haven't really addressed certain areas, especially the left side. I mean, drafted Kirill Kirsanov, who's a third-round pick out of Russia. Who even knows if he's going to make the trip over to the North America? I mean, I think he's signed for Russia, so that's a player that plays the left side that we haven't really talked about. I mean, also we just talked about Tobias Bjornfoot, Jake Mavarari's there. So maybe it's just more or less they just haven't drafted or addressed that issue on the left side of the draft, because we obviously know about the plethora of solid right shot defensemen the Kings have. So I don't take any issue with how they're developing is on that side. I think they're doing it at the right pace. Jordan Spence hasn't lost a step in the AHL. Brant Clark just had a tremendous season in the OHL. I mean, you can argue whether sending him down was a good idea or not, but I think the way he showed, I think it seems like it was a good decision to give him more time and have him put up just astronomical numbers in the OHL, because that's pretty much what he did. And he proved, I would say he proved Rob Blake right by making that decision. So, yeah, we'll have to just see what they do, I guess. This offseason is going to be huge because they have big decisions to make. I don't think Sean Walker's going to be on this team next year. I'd be surprised if he was, maybe even a little disappointed. But so, yeah, there's that decision you have to make. Sean Durzi, obviously. I know Matt Roy is a trade piece that could be talked about because of the right shot defenseman. So, yeah, it's about what Rob Blake does now in the future, because I think a lot of the past decisions he's made have been the right ones.
Yeah, I would say the depth of the D has been pretty good. I mean, let's not forget, I know he's not on the team anymore, but part of that depth was Brock Faber, and it helped get Kevin Fiala. I know Faber had a pretty good showing when he did make his NHL debut and he played for Minnesota in the playoffs, but, you got to give to get, and, that counts, I think, in using that asset. And another player that wasn't even mentioned by Russ, been a favorite of mine, and I think Russ or Randon's too for a while, Helge Grans. Not a great season. I want to see how he bounces back next year on the right side. So I don't know. I think the depth's okay. Obviously, the left side is an issue. I'm all aboard. Talking about a train, Randon, the Tanner Molendic train, left shot defenseman, incredibly skilled D-man, who projects right now to go kind of in that second round. I don't know if he'll go as late as where LA is, but boy, oh boy, that's the exact type of defenseman that I'm talking about.
Early draft coverage from Paterino. I like it.
Yeah. So, but overall, I think it's fine. clearly the left side has been barren, which is why the Kings have been in the position that they've been in for the last couple of seasons.
Well, the defenseman he was talking about was Kirill Kirasanov. He plays for Yavetsk Moscow, and right now at the 198 pounds, 6'1", defensive defenseman, third round pick. But he's 20 years old and he's making millions of dollars. So I don't blame him for staying in Russia. But he could be the future of the left side, right? Like you could see him pairing with a Brent Clark. We saw him in the World Juniors for Russia. And he was a physical player, and the fact that he was not afraid to make hits, but he was defensively sound. And I think that kind of player you could bring up with Clark going forward. I think this defensive core has a lot of issues and a lot of players that are willing to answer the bell. And there's a lot of what ifs going on here with this team because of the fact that how deep their prospect pool is, who made stamps going forward. I mean, it's exciting and terrifying, to be honest with you.
Not to cut you off, Brandon, but Pavelski just won it for Dallas in overtime. So going back to Vegas for Game 5.
Don't call it a comeback.
All right, they're without Ben. Ben's gone for 2 games, right? So they're without him in Game 5 too. Yeah.
So let's get into it because we're over an hour here on defensemen, and we all know the topic of the LA Kings has been goalies. So let's get into it. So the season started with Jonathan Quick, who had a very good season the year before, was a playoff savior, played good in the playoffs. We just didn't win, and we're all waiting for Cal Peterson to come up, and we're like, hey, he could do this. Hey, things happen. They sound Copley, which I was not a fan of. Yada, yada, yada. Fast forward all the way to the playoffs. Through the season, Copley, Korpisalo, we're getting there. What was the goalie story for you on the season? Where do you think we failed here? Is this just a cap strap situation? Is this honoring a hero of the Kings franchise in Jonathan Quick and not making a decision earlier? How do you feel like the goalie situation kind of strapped up here, Russ?
Oh, man. I mean, yeah, the goalie situation is definitely going to be probably it's funny, probably between goalies and defensemen, but I would say goalie situation is the biggest story going into the offseason because, man, I'm with a lot of Kings fans that if Cal Peterson starts on the Kings roster next year, then it's going to be a difficult situation once again.
Do you mean 950 save percentage in the World Championships, Cal Peterson?
Yeah, you could stop pucks from France, Denmark, and Hungary. Yeah, if he's playing those teams, then sign him up. But man, the Cal Peterson situation is the biggest story for me. Jonathan Quick coming into the year, I think we had a lot of the blinders on because of what he did last year, just thinking that, hey, he can just replicate it again just because it's Jonathan Quick. But this is a player that's at the sunset of his career that shouldn't be playing the amount of times he was playing. And unfortunately, because Cal Peterson was so bad, Jonathan Quick had to play, and you didn't really have an option. So I give Rob Blake a lot of credit. I know you brought this up, Joe, so I should give you the credit too, is that Rob Blake really had the cojones to make that trade to trade away Jonathan Quick. Because if he didn't, I mean, the Kings would have been lost. I mean, maybe you can say Copley's, who knows what would have happened if Copley had played hindsight in the playoffs, but they had to make a move there. Jonathan Quick just wasn't serviceable. Obviously, Cal Peterson was an AHL, just not even really that serviceable down there. So this is a situation the Kings are going to have to address, and whether that is re-signing Korpisalo, which I don't think is going to happen. And I also don't see them trading for like a Connor Hellebuck or a UC Saros as much as I want them to. But yeah, it's looking like it's going to be a disappointing offseason in terms of in net, because it's kind of pointing to Cal Peterson and Phoenix Copley being the 2 goalies to start next year, which, man, Rob Blake's going to have a really short leash if that's how he starts.
Yeah, I mean, it was a train wreck, the goalie situation, obviously, to start the season. And Randy, I was there with you. I didn't love the Copley signing, but they must not have felt that great about Matt Villalta, by the way. I think that we talked about it at the time.
Which why though? I mean,
well, he hadn't played.
Let's do a sidetrack. I think he played better last season. Like, can we get him some last season. Like they signed Copley because of his play. I thought he played okay, and and towards the end of the season he played better. Like you're not going to give him one game in the NHL. Like the rain wasn't that great on the defense, so like they were giving him a lot of high danger chances. Like I just think that he should be given an opportunity to like start one or two games. Like
I think. Well, I'm looking at Villalta's stats just to kind of back. So last year or the season before, he was at 2.98 and a 903 save percentage. This year, he was a 2.65 and a 910 in half the games, and that was because of Cal Peterson was down there taking up a lot of those starts. Unfortunate situation, but I think why they didn't play Villalta is what he did in the playoffs 2 years ago. If you remember, he got absolutely shelled in the playoffs. I'm looking at 3 games. He 4.63 goals against average and an 829 save percentage. So if you're Rob
that's
Blake,
not good.
if you're Rob Blake in the offseason last year and you see those numbers, you're kind of envisioning an older Jonathan Quick, a Cal Peterson who wasn't on his game to end the year. You're probably not going to have Mount Villalta be the backstop in case those problems go wrong. And maybe that's why maybe we didn't really look at it that way, but kind of in hindsight, the Phoenix Copley situation or the signing makes.
So you're going to bring a guy in that started 30 games in the NHL?
I mean, they've done it before. I mean, it's either that or you play a goalie who's never even played in the NHL before in Mount Villalta. So, but I mean, yeah, I would have loved to see at least Villalta get a start or two with the Kings this year because you really had no other option besides Copley or Quick, and especially when it was just those two with Quick playing so bad. Why not just give Villalta a start just to see what was going on, especially when the playoffs were pretty much locked up at a certain point. So I don't know. Maybe I'm a big Villalta believer. So I'd like to see him maybe get a start this year, and maybe he will, depending on what happens with Peterson. Because unless they trade him, it certainly looks like that's going to be a player that is going to be starting for the Kings again.
Boy, I don't know that Villalta's is he going to be in the organization? You think? I mean, with Eric Portillo up.
I got to sign back. Like it's not a, it's not an RFA situation, right? It's total free agent, right?
Who's
Villalta's an RFA.
Villalta's an RFA. So okay, so maybe he will be he'll be back there. Well, regardless, I guess going back to the goalie situation for LA. I wasn't huge on the Copley deal at the time. Obviously, it was big because he more or less saved the season by just playing competent. Which they didn't get out of Peterson and Quick. Echo Russ's sentiment. I thought Blake, to pull the trigger on the deal, to have the guts to do that was I want my GM to do that. I think that was big. I'm not rushing to re-sign Korpisalo right now. Similar to Gavrikov, just depends on the term. Like if he's willing to take a 2-year deal at like 2.5 or 3, fine, I'll do it. But I don't think he can get more than that. I'm pretty sure come market time. And I don't know, like who is taking the Cal Peterson contract? Like I genuinely want to know that. I mean, and that's
So are you doing Cal Peterson in a 2021 first or 2024 first?
No.
So
just to move. So here's the thing. Like
is
it a second or is it a third? Like what is your value to move that contract?
Oh boy. I mean, I would need to know the rest of the plan because if you move him out, then who's the goalie that's coming in? Like what are you bringing in? Is it a trade for a goalie? Like I don't think he's moved out in a strictly money deal. I think he gets moved out maybe in a deal hypothetically for a Connor Hellebuck, if you will, or something like that. Although I don't think that's likely. I agree.
All right. So Connor Hellebuck for Cal Peterson, 2024 first. Let's put a high prospect in there and Jordan Spence. Do you do that deal?
I think it's a lot just because he's got 1 year left. Hellebuck does. So that's where my pause is. But I would be tough for me to not pull the trigger on that.
Obviously, most GMs make the trade if they assume they can get an extension. So
right, and Blake has, for the most part, been able to do that. I suppose. I mean, Hellebuck's one of the few goalies that doesn't just fall under #goalies. He's actually really good. So that would pretty much solidify the position. And so, but I guess going back, like, I don't see Cal Peterson being moved in a salary dump deal. I don't know, because I don't know that the Kings want to pay the price to do it, and I don't know that there's a taker for him, because it's not just paper money here, like cap money. It is real dollars that he's owed as well for 2 more years. So I think that's a tougher thing to pull off. So I think it's more likely that it's Cal Peterson and, I don't know, Semyon Varlamov than Copley and Peterson, right? I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like, I think Copley is somebody that they may go, that maybe they waive and they try to go a cheap route in the UFA market with a more experienced goalie, like a Varlamov. Freddie Anderson's a free agent, something like that. Maybe I don't know. I mean, but I'm penciling Cal Peterson into this roster next season. I mean, we listened to Rob Blake last year talk about how Sean Walker was going to be here. They're going to play some righty on the left, and that's exactly what happened. He said we're planning on Cal Peterson being an NHL goalie, so we got to figure out how to get him an NHL goalie. So I'm thinking he's going to be here because it's going to be really difficult to move that.
So, Joe, are you thinking Rob is the? I mean, I'm a Niners fan. Shanahan and Lynch are just straightforward on what they talk about. They're not. They might be a little bit of an a-hole when they talk to reporters, but they usually say what they mean. Do you feel like Rob Blake is that kind of person where, hey, Kyle Peterson's going to be here, we have to find a way to make him be an NHL goalie?
Again, I mean, I'm only going off of kind of the last couple of years here and what he's talked about, and he specifically said that, and we said, like, he said Sean Walker's going to be here. He said there's going to be a righty playing the left side. Now, maybe it wasn't just a saying it, not meaning it, but it ended up happening. So I think, I'm sure he has an idea already what the market is for Cal Peterson and what he may or may not be able to do, but not every team is going to be willing to take on his money. That was reportedly an issue with the Arizona deal, and Jacob Chikrin was nobody wanted Cal's actual money. It's one thing to move. Arizona has got a haul's worth of players that never suited up for them, but they weren't owed real money. It was all contracts. When you look at Datsuk and some of those other guys that are on Arizona.
What's funny is just sorry to cut you off real quick, is I wonder if the goalie in that trade talks was Jonathan Quick and not Cal Peterson.
You could call, maybe. Yeah, maybe. So, yeah, really good point. So, I'm going to believe Peterson's gone when he's gone. I'm thinking he's here. I'm thinking, who's the other one? Is it Phoenix Copley? Did the Kings see enough from Phoenix Copley to say, okay, we're going to go with him as our starter next year? I have to say no, because they didn't start him in playoffs. So my thought is they're going to still try to find a goalie to be their number one. Is it Freddie Anderson? Is it Semyon Varlamov? Is what I think could be cheaper options? Is it Korpisalo? Maybe he comes back. But again, I think he's the youngest of those. He's the youngest of those guys, the Andersons and Varlamovs, and I'm thinking he'll be the most costly, and for the most, like, I'm looking at give me a short-term deal, 1 year, 2 years max, by like 2.5, 3 max, and that's it.
Then who is that guy for you? Who do you think will fit that?
I would do any one of. So I mentioned
this. But who do you think fits that? Not any one of. Who do you think fits that bill? Because Freddie Anderson had success.
That's what I'm saying. Anderson, Varlamov,
they all fit that.
I would do any of those at 2 years in that 2.5 to 3 range. I'm in on, like, I just give me the cheapest one type of thing. I don't want a long-term thing for any of these guys unless there's something Blake's able to work out that we mentioned with, like, a Hellebuyck and moving the Cal contract in that type of deal. That's different. Otherwise, I'm totally fine with a short-term veteran goalie, to buy us a couple of more years, because, we've seen Anderson play really well. We've seen Varlamov play. Varlamov played really well with the Islanders. So I got no issues with either of those. And I think it's an easy wave for Copley to start the season in the AHL. I don't think there's a great chance that he were to get claimed or anything like that. So that's kind of the direction I'm guessing maybe they go. But there's so many so many things that get opened up, and the wild card in all of this is, like, it kind of sounds random to say, but the Toronto Maple Leafs and losing their GM and deciding this, like, I don't know what's happening now with that team.
Mhm.
You know, they had Woll, who ended up being the goalie in the playoffs, but they still have Samsonov, who I'm kind of a fan of. They still have Murray, who I'm not at all a fan of. I don't know that they keep all three in the organization. Somebody could be on the go there. You look at Buffalo, they have a few goalies right now that they're working with. They're heavily in the rumors for Hellebuck. So I think this goalie market is pretty – there's a lot of teams looking to shuffle some things.
Very fluid, yeah.
So I don't know where the fit is for a guy like – that's why I keep coming back to – I don't know what the fit is for Cal Peterson. I genuinely don't know who wants him and who wants his contract.
I think – I mean, Joe, we were talking about it earlier. I mean, Rob Blake has always been about his assets. He's never wanted to just throw them away, and that's kind of why when you talk about like Cal Peterson being like kind of combined with other draft picks or prospects just to get rid of that contract, that's not Rob Blake's MO. That's never been anything he's done. So, and that would also mean him just totally giving up on it, even though kind of seems like he did when just sending him down to the AHL, but
he gave up on Kovalchuk right away. Like he admitted his mistake. You know,
that was different. I mean, the team was heading toward a rebuild at that time. This is a team that should
Easier
be
to do.
contending. Yeah. So I mean, at that point, it was just like, okay, well, we're going to be selling off anyway. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. But for me, I mean, for Cal Peterson, it's weird because I mean, even I'm not writing him off as as not being an NHL goalie anymore. I mean, yeah, I would love to see them try to maybe move that contract, but we've seen goalies make comebacks before. I mean, look at Sergei Bobrovsky. He has never been as bad as Cal Peterson was, but this is a player that was being paid $10 million, and people were just trying to figure out, myself included, trying to figure out a way to get him off the Florida Panthers just because he was not really performing.
He was
at that
bad.
level.
Maybe not Cal bad, but he was bad.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, we've seen these comebacks before. I mean, the thing with Cal too is that, I mean, he's also going to be turning 29. It's funny. I always think of Cal Peterson. I think of a young player, but he's going to be 29 when the season starts. So he's also a little bit older. So I'd be okay with it. I mean, I'd be also a little disappointed. It's just kind of, I want to see what happens. I guess if he does start with the Kings, whether it is with Copley or another player outside, that leash needs to be really short. If he's like, if let's say he starts opening night and he just gets shelled, I need to be looking for a new goalie within the first couple of weeks. Like I need to be trading for a random like Matt Murray or whoever, one of those goalies. Yeah, any one of those goalies you mentioned like needs to come in and help out because obviously Cal Peterson's not footing the bill. And by the way, he's not buyout eligible because the financials just don't work. So, and we've just talked about with his trade assets, that's not happening. So, yeah, I mean, it's looking more and more likely that it's going to be Cal Peterson, and maybe I think Phoenix Copley is the other goalie. I don't see them signing another goalie to bring in because, yeah, it's just I just don't know if they are willing to float out that much more money.
Yeah, I can see that. And again, I think at Calgary too, there's another team that's going to have a goalie probably out the door. So it's like the goalie market is flooded in a way of guys that could potentially.
You and your Markstrom love.
No, I'm saying because they got Wolf coming up. Vladar could be on the way out. So it's a yeah.
I kind of want to go. I want to go off topic here real quick, Joe and Randon. You mentioned Toronto, and Toronto's obviously been a big topic the last couple weeks or so. Kyle Dubas, I don't know why everyone thinks he's such a great GM. Like, why is he getting so much love? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just blinders. But a lot of the moves he's made didn't really seem to work out too well. I don't know. What do you think, Brandon?
I think he's the willingness. So being an Oakland A's fan, the willingness to win for Kyle Dubas is his biggest strong suit. He's willing to make any move that he thinks will benefit his team.
Definitely showed it this year, that's for sure.
The scrutiny in Toronto is higher than any other city in the NHL to win. Like the amount of reporters, the amount of scrutiny, the amount of what's going on. So he's at an all-time apex of every move he makes. So he's obviously has that need to make moves. So whether that's a downfall to the franchise, we can debate. But at least he's willing to. At least he's willing to trade. Hey, bring in Tavares.
Yeah.
Bring in this guy. Bring in that guy. Let's sell this pick off. Let's do this. Like he's trying to make moves. And being from a team like the Oakland A's who makes zero moves besides of selling out guys or whatever, like you as a Maple Leafs fan, regardless of the moves have been successful or not, have to be okay with a guy who is willing to make those moves. Like you could be in that franchise and say, hey, Tavares has got too much money. We won't do that deal. Let's just stand pat. Let's not do that kind of stuff. But hey, let's bring in this guy and see what he can do. Let's bring in this guy and see what he can do. Let's bring it. Like ultimately, I think it's been a disappointing, successful reign for Kyle Dubas. It's successful because of the fact that he's done whatever he could do as a GM to make them successful. Were they the right moves? No, they weren't the right moves in hindsight, but he tried. And I think that's would be a positive for me as a fan right now. I'm like, as the Kings, I mean, there's been plenty of good moves for Rob Blake, but like, are you hiding our prospects? Are you doing these things? Are you hindering our franchise? Like he just seems very passive. And as a fan, or in any sport, it's what have you done for me now? It's bang, 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 bang.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should be okay with what he's done, whether it worked out or not. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a Maple Leafs fan. I don't know how the pressure that would be. Like all my franchises that I root for outside the Niners are not like glory franchises where the scrutiny is high on every single fucking move.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's been a bit of a. It's funny you mentioned that, Russ. Literally just on the golf course on Monday, I had the exact same conversation with a buddy of mine. I think his trades have been. I would say I'd have to go back and look through his trade tree, but I'd say overall the trades have been fine. I don't know that. I mean, there's going to be some that aren't great. I think he the one that somehow got rid of David Clarkson's contract. Like at the time, that was a big deal. But for me, where he's failed is the signings of his guys, because like William Nylander pretty much got what he wanted. Austin Matthews pretty much got what he wanted. Jonathan Tavares got a significant deal. Like there was never any, and I don't know if that makes him a bad negotiator or whatever, but there was no like, all those guys got like basically max deals. And it's like you weren't able to find a discount anywhere and get one of them to take, not even team friendly, but just get something. So whether it was holding out a little bit longer or whatever, to me, the signings, I go back and forth on it, because the signings, like you want to sign your stars, and he did that. But it really, the way it all went down, it just, I don't know, I think it kind of hindered some stuff. I mean, there were some trades that didn't go so well, but I think overall his trades have been fine. But Russ, let's be honest, he's the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, so he's going to get a lot of hype, right or wrong. He's a younger guy. I think I'd be curious to see what he does in a team where he's got more control. I think it's pretty clear that he didn't have full control in Toronto, with Shanahan there and ownership. So I know there's rumors with him going to Pittsburgh, which really is sour for me, because I don't want to. I still consider him smart, and I don't want a smart GM taking over Pittsburgh with my still thin Marcus Pettersson hopes. But if
why would he go? Why would he go there with an aging Crosby? Like to think?
Yeah,
I don't know. Because that window is really, really, really like short, if it's even open still. So that is interesting.
If he came to Anaheim as a GM, like with that young prospect pool, they're willing to make moves and a top 5 pick, like with zero expectations. Like if he came to Anaheim, there would be zero expectations compared to Toronto.
Yeah. I think the Pittsburgh thing could be, he could see that as say, you know what, I got a couple
like
years
a challenge.
A couple years with these guys to try to win one more cup, and he might say, I can be the guy that does it. I can be the guy that pulls this deal off. And I don't know. I do think he's a good GM. I don't know that he's like the best GM in the world or anything like that. But I think he's fine. He's probably perhaps slightly overhyped just because he's Toronto.
I think the one thing where he went wrong, because I actually liked a lot of the moves that they made, especially at this trade deadline. Ryan O'Reilly was the perfect player I thought they needed. You brought in like Sam Lafferty, they had Luke Shen, McCabe. So I thought, I would agree with Randon. Like, I would love to have a GM that's not afraid to make moves. And we kind of saw that a little bit from Rob Blake. But I think the one mistake he made was only signing Matthews to 5 years. Because now you have Matthews coming up to a big UFA contract where he's got a no movement clause kicking in a couple, like what, a month, July 1st. So they have no control over what's going to happen, whether he wants to resign or if he's not going to resign, they just can't even move him at that point. So you're kind of put in a bind at this situation, just hoping he's going to resign because you only signed him for 5 years and now he's going to be a free agent when he's 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that's something I'm sure they would have loved to tag maybe that 8-year deal. Maybe that's why we're seeing these young players get these long-term deals, so that way they're not stuck with these.
We've been talking about that. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So we've been talking about it. I don't know this past deadline. I don't know. I think he got a little caught, and I wonder how much of the decisions were his about getting quote unquote bigger, quote unquote more physical. You brought in Luke Shen. You brought in McCabe. Okay.
Is there any prospect off the table for Matthews?
No.
Trade the cupboard.
Brant Clark. No, I'm just kidding.
Off the table. Or on the table. I mean.
On the table. I'm trading
Brant
Clark.
He's off the table. He's in the cupboard. No.
No, the player. I mean, if I don't think Matthews is getting moved. That's a player they're going to hold on to. He's a big believer too, and Justin Bieber's a big fan of the Maple Leafs, so those two are kind of friends there. But I think if they're able to pluck a player from Toronto, it's William Nylander.
Yes,
that's the player I'm looking for.
Yes,
and you have a player that fits the role. He's a wing. He's a scorer. He's also really good friends with Adrian Kempe, and they were teammates during their time with the Swedish Elite League. So, just saying.
So what does that cost? You think? 2024 first and Byfield? 2024 fan?
No, he's a UFA. He's a UFA.
You assume they make the trade with a contract, right? So
no, you wouldn't have to trade Byfield. I mean, you could probably get away with like Spence. I mean, first round pick, maybe even like a roster player at that point. Because if he wants to get, like, let's say he wants to leave and they let him know and he lets them know, then you have your hands tied with just trying to figure out any way to get kind of. I mean, look at the Kings. They got Kevin Fiala for Brock Faber, a second round draft pick and a first rounder. That's a top 10 winger in the NHL right now. I mean, he could be right up there with William Nylander.
So Kupari in a third for William Nylander from
there
Russell from Russell Morgan. I'm going to bring it back here because I think we got a couple things going on here with the goalies. Who's on the Portillo train according to Nav? Big trade in the middle of the deadline here. Obviously, this shakes up the prospect pool. Where does he fit in? Because obviously he didn't play a game for the Kings franchise, and we weren't trying to go too far in the future. But I think he's a big name that the goalie market for the Kings is so up in the air. Where does that dice fall for you with Portillo?
I'm a big fan of the trade. Loved getting him in. You know, he's immediately the Kings' top goalie prospect. But I'd pump the brakes a little bit. I think this is a guy that's going to need a little bit of season. He's a big boy. He can be, from what I've read and from what I've heard and some people I've talked to, he's a little awkward at times in that. So like this could take a little bit of time from a development standpoint. But of the talent, I think he's a raw talent. Big boy. I just think it may take a little bit. Like I don't be alarmed if he comes in and has a rough go of it his first pro year like that. I'm kind of expecting that. Like he's going to need to get it kind of some things figured out timing wise. But I think there's talent there. It's whether he can harness it enough to become, a consistent NHL goalie, which is, I'd say, at least a couple of years away.
I'll say it like this. I think he's got the same sky high potential as a player like as a goalie like Jesper Wallstedt or Yaroslav Askarov. I think he's got that potential in terms of raw talent, but I think he's also got a lot lower of a floor than those two goalies.
That's
And
fair.
for me, it's hard because I've barely even seen the goalie play. So I mean, and the thing, it's not like he lit the world on fire in his last year with Michigan. I mean, he was also on a really good team too. So it's tough. It's funny we're talking about goalies. We haven't even mentioned that they promoted Bill Ranford to the director of goaltending. The Kings don't even have a goalie coach right now. So who knows? He's going to be coaching these players, and they don't even have one in the Ontario Reign. So that's going to be a big decision to somebody that can help out with Portillo, who's obviously going to be a project with the Reign. So I'm curious to see. I'd be very, very surprised if he got a start with the Kings this year. Maybe even a start with the Kings the year after that. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. This will be a big year for him on the Reign, and I think the Reign are going to be a fun team to watch. I think I mentioned it before, but
if DraftKings were to put out a prop bet over and under 0.5 starts on the Kings next year for Portillo, would you take the over or under?
Under.
Yeah.
Really?
If it's even money, we're doing even money here. I'd do the under.
I think he hasn't played a pro game yet, right? And I think that's going to be right. He didn't play in Ontario. I just think it's a lot of times these goalies are going to take some time, which is why, as you guys are well aware, I hate goalies taking them early. I'm a very big #goalies guy. And I just think, if anything, they take a long time to develop too, till they reach their peak. So give him at least 2 full seasons in Ontario.
I think it'd be a little bit of a disservice to Matt Villalta if he started before him, if he got a start before him, because I think Villalta's put in his time. He's really big in the locker room in terms of a culture guy. So I think the team likes him. It's just a crappy situation for Villalta that he really had to take.
I mean, I know
the heat for Cal Peterson getting the starts in the AHL. I mean, those were starts that Villalta should have been getting instead of Peterson.
I know that our resident Reign expert, Mr. Kyle Garcia, is not here, but do you give the edge to Portillo? Do you give the edge to Villalta? Do you sign another Copley-esque type player in the offseason? Like, how do you feel? Like, if you were to make the gut check decision right now, you're Rob Blake. Are you bringing another person in, or are you rolling with Portillo and Villalta next season?
I wonder what they do with Portillo. Will he go to Ontario, or will he go to the East? Will he go to Greenville? Swamp Rabbit.
He's not a Swamp Rabbit. I mean, as much as I want him in that jersey, as much as I want a jersey, Greenville.
But I listen. I think the Kings are saying a lot about Villalta without saying a lot about Villalta. They brought in Phoenix Copley when they could have had Villalta be kind of their veteran AHL guy, if you will. It was his 3rd, 4th year in the league at that point. So it's not as if he's a young buck necessarily in terms of the AHL. It was Copley they got the call, and we never saw Villalta. When Cal Peterson goes down, and now this could be simply contract, and they're like, we got to get this guy figured out. But it was Peterson that played. They go and get Portillo, in part because they know they don't have a top goalie prospect, and that includes their guy that's been in the AHL for a couple of years. So I don't know. Like I wonder if the Kings are kind of telling us where they think Villalta is without coming out and saying it. Just look at the moves.
Well, I think you're right there, Joe, because my thing is this. Villalta was a 3rd-round pick. Portillo, they traded a 3rd-round pick for him. But Villalta's stock has dropped since he's been drafted and then evened out after that. But it's what have you done for me lately in the hockey league, right? So the new 3rd-round pick is, hey, this is a new asset that I'm giving away to get this guy. I think they think Portillo's not the guy of the future or whatever they can be, but I'd be surprised that I would give equal odds that you would see Hrenek or a random goalie on the roster and Villalta not even on the roster than Villalta starting next season. I think Portillo is the future, and he should, based on their investment, have the opportunity to start more games.
With Ontario, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I don't see them getting rid of Villalta though. I think you can go you can probably go back and forth with them in Ontario next year. And
I wonder though, do you think they would, Russ? Because again, I kind of thought that they would do that unless they just, Hrenek. Because I thought that they may do that with Villalta and like a Hrenek this year. But they went out and got Copley instead. So is there to Randon's question, could they go get one of those veteran type of goalies to do that and go with Villalta and the veteran? And I don't know. I'd be interested to see how that shakes out. But
if they did that, then yeah, I'm kind of on your side where they'll probably end up sending Portillo to the ECHL because that's what they did with Hrenek, and because when he came in his first his last year he was in the ECHL, right? So
yeah,
I don't know. I think it's tough because I think they brought in Copley because they wanted to get Hrenek more starts. He's obviously probably not going to start more than Villalta at that point last season. So you send him to the ECHL. You have Villalta and Copley going back and forth for an Ontario Reign team that they probably wanted to be a lot better than what they finished out to be. So I think going into next year, I think if you have Villalta and Portillo, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch for me in Ontario. I'll say it like this. I don't see one taking starts away from another. I can see them sharing time pretty well.
Portillo he has an actual contract. So I kind of do think that I don't think he would go till East Coast League. I think he's going to be
with the Reign, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big Villalta guy, though. I hope he gets a start.
I mean, you're looking at David Hrenek, right? 6 foot, 192, 5th overall or 5th round pick. Like the acumen is there for Portillo, and he played at I wouldn't say a better university because St. Cloud State is a pretty good hockey program. I don't know. I just think that the investment for the Kings is higher for Portillo than it is for Hrenek, and so it might be different outcome this season. But Joe, you're right. Like I thought it was going to be Villalta Hrenek. I thought they were going to go 50-50 split, let the cream rise to the top, and then they brought some guy in, and he ended up saving the season for the Kings. Will that happen again? I'm not 100% sure. All I know is Johnny Vrampa says it here. Don't touch our Clark. Exactly, because I'm the conductor, and if there's no Clark, I don't have a train, and then I don't have a home, and so that's not good for me. But I appreciate you guys here. Hey, the Triumphant's back in its glory. We had a good time tonight. I appreciate you boys. I just want to say follow Hockey Royalty here on the YouTube channel. Like and subscribe all of our content. We're going to start some postseason stuff. We're always going to have the draft stuff, even though we don't have a first round pick. We want to see what's going on in the draft. Maybe we move up, maybe we don't. Where's that second round value? We're going to get our heavy hitters in this off season. Always go on the website for these articles. Look at the deep dives that our writers do. Really appreciate that. Kyle Garcia awesome with the Reign this year. He's coming in with articles left and right about our minor league system, world championships with Chromiak and all that kind of stuff. Hockey Royalty's got where it's at. We're where you guys need to be for LA Kings content. Follow us on Twitter at JW Paterino, NHL Russell, Randa Commando 24, and Kopitar 4 HOF. DraftKings code THPN. Man, it was good seeing you guys. Appreciate you guys coming down here.
Good to be back
here. Good to be back. And as always on this podcast, go Kings go.